Picture this. It's dawn on April 18th, 1943. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. The air is thick with humidity and the smell of aviation fuel. 18 young American pilots stand silently beside their P-38 Lightning fighters in the pre-dawn darkness, their faces barely visible in the glow of cigarettes and flashlights. These aren't seasoned veterans. Most are barely out of college. Tom Lanphier is 24, Rex Barber, 23. Kids, really. Yet in less than 4 hours, these college-age Americans will kill Japan's most beloved admiral and change the course of World War II forever. But here's what makes this story absolutely extraordinary. None of them know who they're hunting. Major John Mitchell, the mission commander, stands before them with a map, his voice cutting through the tropical night. "Gentlemen, we're going after a VIP. That's all you need to know." The pilots exchange glances. A VIP important enough to risk 18 fighters and crews on a 435-mile suicide mission? Important enough to strap massive fuel tanks to their aircraft that will make them sitting ducks if they encounter enemy fighters. What they don't know, what they can't know, is that 435 miles away, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto is eating his final breakfast. Let's step back and understand the incredible irony about to unfold. Admiral Yamamoto isn't just any Japanese commander. He's the architect of Pearl Harbor, the man whose name Americans curse with every breath. But here's what most people don't know. Yamamoto never wanted this war. Picture him at Harvard University in 1920, a young Japanese naval officer studying economics and petroleum, learning to play poker with American students, touring American oil fields. He saw the vastness of this country, understood its industrial might. When Japanese leaders spoke of war with America, Yamamoto's response was chilling. "I can run wild for 6 months, or maybe a year, but after that, I have utterly no confidence." He was forced to plan Pearl Harbor because duty demanded it, but privately, he knew Japan was signing its own death warrant. Now, on this April morning in 1943, that prophecy is about to come true in the most personal way possible. At Rabaul Airfield, Yamamoto's staff is nervous. His aide begs him to change the schedule. General Imamura warns him about American fighters in the area. He'd nearly been shot down himself just weeks earlier. Vice Admiral Ozawa offers a massive fighter escort. Yamamoto refuses everything. Why? Because showing fear would crush the morale of his men. So the 59-year-old admiral climbs into his Betty bomber, carrying his samurai sword and a poem he'd written to his mistress, locked away in his personal safe. The poem's final lines would prove prophetic. The body is frail, yet the spirit is strong. Meanwhile, 435 miles southeast, 18 P-38. Lightnings roar down Henderson Field's runway at precisely 7:10 a.m. Each aircraft carries 2 massive fuel tanks, one standard, one oversized 330-gallon tank flown in specially from New Guinea. The math is brutal. They have exactly enough fuel to reach the intercept point with maybe 20 minutes of fighting time before they must turn back or crash into the ocean. Major Mitchell leads them at 50 feet above the Pacific, flying in radio silence. For over 2 hours, nothing but the roar of twin Allison engines and ocean spray on their windscreens. These young pilots are flying the most technically challenging navigation mission of the Pacific War, using compass readings and dead reckoning that would challenge airline pilots today. But here's the incredible part. American codebreakers had worked for 48 straight hours to decrypt Yamamoto's itinerary. They knew his exact schedule, his precise route, even that he'd be in the lead aircraft of 2 Betty bombers with 6 Zero escorts. The intelligence was so perfect it seemed impossible. At 9:30 a.m., The P-38s reach the western coast of Bougainville Island. Mitchell checks his watch. They're 3 minutes early. Absolutely perfect navigation after a 435-mile flight at wavetop level with 1940s equipment. And then, like something from a movie, 2 Betty bombers appear on the horizon exactly on schedule. 9:34 a.m., the moment that will haunt both nations forever. Bogies, 11 o'clock high. The radio crackles to life as 18 American pilots spot their targets. But there's immediate confusion. The intelligence said 1 Betty bomber, but there are 2. Which one carries Yamamoto? The Japanese formation is flying at 6,500 feet. 2 G4M Betty bombers with 6 Zero fighters providing escort. Admiral Yamamoto sits in the lead aircraft, completely unaware that his exact location has been betrayed by his own communications. In the second Betty, his chief of staff, Admiral Matome Ugaki, peers out the window, probably thinking about the inspection they're about to conduct. Neither man knows they have 20 minutes to live. The Americans drop their external fuel tanks and climb. But disaster strikes immediately. One of the killer flight P-38s can't release its tank. The aircraft becomes uncontrollable, forcing both pilot and wingman out of the attack. Now, only 2 P-38s, flown by Tom Lanphier and Rex Barber, are positioned to attack the bombers. 2 college kids against Japan's greatest admiral and his escorts. The Zero fighters dive to intercept, but it's too late. The P-38 Lightning was specifically chosen for this mission because of its devastating firepower. 4.50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon. When those weapons hit the lightly built Betty bombers, the result is catastrophic. Rex Barber's P-38 shudders as Japanese bullets tear through it. 104 holes will later be counted in his aircraft, but his cannon is firing, sending 20mm shells into the lead Betty's fuselage. The bomber doesn't just take damage, it disintegrates. From the second Betty, Admiral Ugaki watches in horror as his commander's aircraft begins trailing black smoke. In his diary, he would later write, "I just said to myself, my God, I could think of nothing else. I grabbed the shoulder of the Air Staff Officer Muroy, pointed to the first aircraft and said, 'Look at the Commander-in-Chief's plane.' This became my parting with him forever. The entire engagement lasts 20 minutes, but Yamamoto's Betty bomber spirals into the jungle canopy within seconds of being hit. The second Betty, carrying Ugaki, crashes into the ocean at full speed. Ugaki somehow survives, floating in the Pacific and watching black smoke rise from where his commander and closest friend has just died. Meanwhile, the young American pilots have no idea what they've just accomplished. They're racing back to Guadalcanal, burning fuel at an alarming rate, probably thinking they've shot down just another Japanese transport. Tom Lanphier and Rex Barber are already arguing over who fired the fatal shots, a dispute that will consume both men for the rest of their lives. The next morning, Japanese search teams hack through the dense Bougainville jungle, following the smoke trail from Yamamoto's crashed bomber. What they find will haunt Japan forever. Admiral Yamamoto's body has been thrown from the aircraft, but he's still strapped to his seat. In his right hand, he clutches his samurai sword. An autopsy reveals 2 bullet wounds, one in his jaw, another in his shoulder. He was killed instantly, before the plane even crashed. The medical report describes his body as being found in a state of great dignity. Imagine the shock rippling through the Japanese recovery team. This isn't just any casualty. This is their greatest naval hero, the man who delivered their most stunning victory at Pearl Harbor, the man the entire nation saw as invincible. But the Americans had reached him. In the middle of the Pacific, 435 miles from their base, flying at impossible odds, they had found and killed Japan's most protected leader. The psychological impact is immediate and devastating. Japan conceals Yamamoto's death for an entire month, desperately trying to process what this means. When they finally announce it on May 21st, the nation goes into mourning unlike anything since the emperor's father had died. Here's what makes this story so tragically human. Everyone involved was changed forever by those 20 minutes. Tom Lanphier spent the rest of his life claiming credit for killing Yamamoto. He gave interviews, wrote articles, became famous as the man who shot down Yamamoto. But Rex Barber, whose P-38 came back with 104 bullet holes, insisted he fired the fatal shots. The argument consumed both men for decades. In 1991, 4 years after Lanphier's death, the U.S. Air Force finally conducted an official investigation. They concluded that Barber, not Lanphier, had fired the shots that killed Yamamoto. Lanphier posthumously lost his ace status, his kill count dropping from 5 to 4. But here's the deeper tragedy. These young men never fully understood what they'd accomplished. They'd killed a grandfather figure. Yamamoto was 59, old enough to be their grandfather. They'd eliminated not just Japan's greatest admiral, but a man who privately opposed the very war he was forced to fight. For Japan, losing Yamamoto was like losing their compass in the middle of a storm. His replacement, Admiral Manichi Koga, would later say, "There was only one Yamamoto, and no one can replace him." Japanese naval strategy never recovered its innovative edge. The ripple effects extended far beyond military tactics. Yamamoto's death shattered the Japanese belief in their own invincibility. If Americans could reach their most protected leader, what was safe? The psychological warfare was perhaps more valuable than any military victory. Admiral Ugaki, the sole witness to Yamamoto's death, never recovered emotionally. He would go on to command Japanese battleships at Leyte Gulf, but the war was already lost. In August 1945, hours after Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender, Ugaki climbed into a kamikaze aircraft for one final mission. He was shot down and killed. The last kamikaze pilot of World War II, still trying to join his commander in death. This story resonates today because it reveals the deeply personal cost of global conflict. In our age of drone warfare and smart bombs, we've almost forgotten that war is ultimately about individual human beings making split-second decisions that change history. Think about the incredible chain of events. American codebreakers working 48 hours straight to decrypt one message. 18 young pilots flying the most challenging navigation mission of their lives. A Japanese admiral who knew his country was doomed but continued fighting out of duty. All converging in 20 minutes of aerial combat that shifted the balance of the Pacific War. But perhaps most importantly, this story shows us that even in war, individual character matters. Yamamoto, despite planning Pearl Harbor, was a man of honor who privately opposed the conflict. The American pilots, despite their youth, displayed incredible courage and skill. Admiral Ugaki showed loyalty unto death. These weren't cartoon villains or propaganda heroes. They were complex human beings caught in the machinery of global war, each trying to do their duty as they understood it. The next time you hear about military conflicts on the news, remember April 18th, 1943. Remember that behind every strategic decision, every tactical victory, every casualty report, there are individual human stories of courage, tragedy, honor, and loss. History isn't just about nations and armies, it's about people. Young American pilots who never expected to kill a legend. A Japanese admiral who died clutching his ancestral sword. A chief of staff who spent his final months trying to join his commander in death 20 minutes, 18 fighters, 2 bombers. And the course of World War II changed forever. The courage displayed by both sides on April 18th, 1943, reminds us that heroism isn't about nationality. It's about individual character under extreme pressure. If this story of impossible odds, split-second decisions, and lives changed forever moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're bringing you the most dramatic, untold stories of World War II, the human moments that shaped our world. What other World War II stories would you like to see brought to life? Let us know in the comments below, and remember, history isn't just about dates and battles. It's about people, just like us, facing impossible choices and changing the world forever. The last image, a photograph of Admiral Yamamoto's samurai sword, recovered from the jungle crash site, now displayed in a Tokyo museum. A silent reminder of the day when 20 minutes changed the Pacific War forever.